Imagine sitting in this cramped, overly air-conditioned doctor's office, right? You're staring at a piece of paper that basically says your 5-year-old child might never speak.
Oh, that's just the worst feeling.
Right. And the specialist sitting across from you they just close the folder. They give you this sympathetic nod and say, well, there's nothing else we can do. You just have to manage it.
Yeah, that sentence right there, that represents a massive, profound structural failure for the patient. Because, we're conditioned to view modern medicine as this continuous ladder.
Exactly. There's always supposed to be another rung.
Right, another therapy, another pill, another specialist. So when that ladder just abruptly ends, the psychological weight of that is, well, it's crushing.
It's the ultimate medical dead end. But, we've been reviewing a stack of really fascinating case files this week about families who just completely refuse to accept that finality.
Yeah, when the local map runs out, they just start looking across borders.
Exactly. So welcome to the PlacidWay Pulse. Our mission today is to take a really deep dive into the actual science, the crazy logistics, and, the real human realities of advanced stem cell therapy in Mexico.
We're basically going to deconstruct how these global medical boundaries are totally shifting and look at how vetting platforms like PlacidWay actually function as a safe bridge for these patients.
Because the overarching theme in all the data we looked at is this fundamental shift in philosophy, right? It's moving from just managing a chronic decline to actively pursuing real cellular regeneration.
Yeah, and the catalyst for that shift usually starts with just sheer exhaustion.
Oh, the burnout of the local healthcare system is immense. When you dig into these families dealing with severe life-altering conditions, their reality at home is just defined by this very specific kind of desperation.
It really is. Take the Valea family, for instance.
Right.
They have 2 boys, ages 3 and 5, both diagnosed with severe autism spectrum disorder. And the reports describe their daily reality not just as, challenging, but as a constant, unpredictable storm.
And the details there are just striking. I mean, the boys suffered from extreme hyperactivity, just constantly darting around the house. They couldn't self-regulate or settle down.
Yeah, and the mother noted this really paradoxical environment, which was fascinating. There was this profound, deafening silence because there was a complete lack of verbal communication from the kids.
Wow.
But the house was never actually quiet, They dealt with chronic sleeplessness and these massive meltdowns over just fundamental tasks.
Like just asking a kid to put on their shoes. Things most families literally don't even think twice about become these insurmountable hurdles. It's a systemic fatigue.
It really is.
And we see that exact same exhaustion in a totally different medical context with Veronica Santos.
Oh, right, the kidney failure case.
Yeah. She was facing end-stage kidney failure. Her charting showed her kidney function, like her actual health score, had plummeted to a critically low 7.6%.
Just to put that 7.6% into perspective, at that level of renal failure, the body is basically poisoning itself.
Right. The toxins just build up.
Exactly. The toxins your kidneys normally filter out are just flooding the bloodstream. Veronica described her body as feeling incredibly heavy. She was plagued by this perpetual internal static of exhaustion.
Because she was looking directly at a future completely tethered to a dialysis machine. Or, just hoping against all odds for a high-risk organ transplant.
Right.
So whether it's a neurodevelopmental condition or literally organ failure, the traditional healthcare experience for these severe cases feels like, well, it's like trying to bail out a sinking ship with a teaspoon.
Yeah, while paying a huge premium for the spoon.
Exactly. You're just churning through wait lists, draining your life savings on therapies that get minimal progress, and you aren't actually healing. You're just fighting to tread water in this expensive maze where every exit is boarded up.
Which forces a really critical psychological pivot. I mean, the fear of leaving your home country to navigate a foreign medical system is massive.
Terrifying.
Right. But eventually that fear is eclipsed by the sheer terror of staying exactly where you are and just watching the decline happen.
And that pivot points us directly to the clinical landscape in Mexico City. Specifically, this mixed stem cells clinic that features so heavily in these cases.
Yeah, and what's remarkable in the patient testimonials is the immediate shift in the environment there.
Right. They arrive expecting that clinical coldness they get at home, but the reality is entirely different.
The Valea family's arrival is a perfect illustration of that. So you have these parents who have just navigated international travel with two severely overstimulated autistic kids.
Which is an ordeal in itself.
Oh, absolutely. They walk into the reception area of the clinic, and the chaotic storm from their home life just breaks loose. The older son is darting around, and he literally physically crashes into a transparent glass panel.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the mother said she heard a sickening crack.
See, as a parent, that is the exact moment your stomach completely drops. You just brace yourself for the staff to sigh heavily, hand you a clipboard, and totally judge you.
You expect to be treated like a massive inconvenience.
Yeah, exactly.
But the protocol at this facility was entirely different. A nurse immediately approached, but not to scold or, manage the child clinically.
Right.
She just gently guided the boy to a quiet space and introduced a toy to help him self-regulate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the mother explicitly noted that this single moment of unscripted empathy was when she realized she wasn't just a clinical file anymore.
It's such a profound human moment. And, well, following that intake, the 5-year-old begins treatment. And according to the timeline, within just a few weeks, that constant storm actually begins to settle.
Yeah, the mother describes it as a literal fog lifting from his mind. He points to a book, says the word doggy, and shortly after, he looks her directly in the eye and says, "Mama."
That is incredible.
And that leap in cognitive processing prompted them to immediately start treatment for the 3-year-old. His post-treatment markers showed he started sleeping through the night, babbling, and this is crucial developmentally, he began engaging in cooperative play with his brother.
Instead of just playing alongside him. Okay, I actually had to stop us here for a second because this is where the skeptical part of my brain totally kicks in.
Fair enough.
I mean, it is incredibly moving to hear about a nonverbal child suddenly saying, "Mama." But I want to strip away the emotion for a minute. Let's drop the buzzwords. What is actually happening biologically here?
Right, the actual science.
Yeah, because we aren't talking about magic. How does injecting biological material into an arm translate to a child developing brand new vocabulary and cooperative social skills?
It is arguably the most important question you can ask because we really have to separate clinical science from speculative hope. First, we need to clarify what these clinics are actually using. In these specific protocols, they are utilizing mesenchymal stem cells, or MSCs.
Okay, but what makes them different from those highly controversial stem cells we constantly hear about in political debates?
Oh, they are entirely different. The controversy usually surrounds embryonic stem cells. MSCs are adult stem cells. They're typically harvested from ethically donated, full-term umbilical cord tissue.
Oh, okay, or from bone marrow, right.
Exactly. Sometimes a patient's own bone marrow. They are incredibly potent, but their primary function isn't what people usually assume. People think stem cells just magically morph into missing brain cells.
Right, like they just become whatever you need.
Yeah, but they don't. MSCs function much more like the body's native paramedics and repair coordinators.
Wait, so they are becoming new neurons in the autistic brain?
Not primarily, no. Extensive clinical research into severe autism points to underlying neuroinflammation and huge immune dysregulation in the brain.
Okay.
So the neural pathways are physically present, but the signaling environment is highly toxic.
Let me try to visualize this. If the brain's communication network is like a radio station trying to broadcast a signal, the neuroinflammation is like this aggressive, overbearing static, completely drowning out the music.
Yes.
So the native broadcast is there, but the child just can't access it.
That is a highly accurate way to frame it, honestly. When millions of these MSCs are introduced intravenously, they possess this unique homing mechanism. They are biologically drawn directly to sites of high inflammation.
So they find the static on their own.
Exactly. They migrate to that neuroinflammatory environment and begin a process called paracrine signaling. Basically, they secrete specialized proteins and growth factors called cytokines.
Which are like the sound engineers stepping into the radio station.
Exactly right. Those cytokines act as the engineers. They heavily modulate the local immune response, literally physically turning down the dials on that inflammatory static.
Wow.
And furthermore, they stimulate angiogenesis, which is the creation of brand new capillary blood vessels.
Okay, so better blood flow.
Right. This improves blood flow, delivering much higher concentrations of oxygen and nutrients to the neural tissue. So when you physically clear the toxic inflammation and improve the oxygen supply, the native neural pathways can finally fire and connect effectively.
So that biological mechanism is what actually lifts the fog. It's what allows a child to process the world and formulate the word mama.
Yes, exactly.
That makes
Right.
profound biological sense. You aren't replacing the brain, you are optimizing the environment so the brain can do what it was originally built to do.
Precisely.
But, okay, if MSCs are systemic repair coordinators drawn to inflammation, let's test that logic on a totally different system. Let's bring Veronica back into focus.
Okay, the kidney case.
Yeah. With her kidney failure, we aren't talking about clearing up communication pathways or static. We are talking about severe physical organ damage, scar tissue. You can't just unscar a kidney, can you?
Well, traditional nephrology generally asserts that you cannot. Kidneys are basically complex filtration plants made up of roughly 1 million microscopic filtering units called nephrons.
Right.
In end-stage renal failure, those nephrons are dying off and being choked by fibrotic scarring. It's this dense buildup of collagen. Once a nephron is choked out by scar tissue, the standard medical consensus is that the filter is just offline permanently.
Hence the dialysis machine to do the filtering outside the body.
Exactly. But Veronica underwent renal stem cell treatment at Mex Stem Cells. She received targeted infusions of those exact same mesenchymal stem cells.
And the homing mechanism worked the same way.
Functioned identically, but this time the target was the severe inflammation in her renal tissue.
But wait, how do cytokines fix physical scar tissue? That's what I don't get.
Because the MSCs deploy a totally different tool from their paracrine tool belt for this. They secrete specific enzymes like matrix metalloproteinases, which actively break down and dissolve that fibrotic collagen buildup.
Really?
Yes, they literally clear the choking scar tissue, and simultaneously they release growth factors that signal the kidney's own dormant progenitor cells.
So they wake them up.
Exactly. They essentially wake up the local healthy tissue and command it to start dividing and rebuilding the damaged nephron structures.
That is astonishing. They act as the demolition crew for the scar tissue and the general contractor for the new tissue.
And the data from her specific case reflects that dual action perfectly. Her post-treatment diagnostics showed her kidney function climbed significantly out of that critical 7.6% range.
Oh, wow.
The organ began filtering toxins naturally again. She completely avoided the need for dialysis.
That's incredible.
And her profound physical exhaustion just vanished because the internal poisoning finally stopped. We were looking at measurable, quantifiable organ regeneration here, not just some subjective feeling of wellness.
Okay, the biological science is clearly robust. But reading these accounts, I mean, there is a massive gap between understanding the cellular mechanism and actually getting yourself or your sick child to a clinic in a foreign country.
Oh, the logistics.
Now, the logistics seem like an absolute nightmare to me. Let's look at Mario Hagag's account. He traveled from Florida to Mexico City with his 7.5-year-old son, Kyle, for autism treatment.
Mario's timeline is incredibly useful for understanding the actual reality of this kind of medical tourism, because this wasn't a quick weekend trip.
Right.
The protocol required a sustained presence. They were in Mexico City for nearly 2 weeks, and during that time, Kyle underwent 5 separate rounds of stem cell injections.
Which requires a huge medical infrastructure.
It does. The care was meticulously structured under Dr. Rudolfo and a specialized team, and Mario highlighted how transparent Dr. Rudolfo was about the timeline of healing.
Like managing expectations.
Exactly. He explicitly explained that the systemic repair, the angiogenesis, and the reduction of that neuroinflammation, it isn't an overnight switch.
Right, it's a process.
It takes 4 to 6 months to observe the full behavioral benefits as those cells integrate and really do their work.
Which brings up a secondary, but honestly massive component of this. For 2 weeks, the Hagag family had to actually live in Mexico City. The environmental stress of travel can be so overwhelming, especially with a neurodivergent child.
Oh, the environmental ecosystem surrounding the clinic is a huge factor in the healing process. Cortisol, the stress hormone, is a known inhibitor of cellular repair. Yes, if a patient is terrified of their surroundings, their body is fighting a defensive war rather than focusing on regeneration.
And Mario's notes explicitly detail how their preconceived notions were totally shattered. Like, they stayed at the Layla Hotel in this highly developed, really beautiful neighborhood.
Yeah, they had access to incredible food and interacted with really welcoming locals.
He described how their perception shifted from this anxiety-ridden, scary unknown that we often see portrayed in the news to a totally secure, culturally vibrant, hospitable experience.
And that holistic safety is what allows the parasympathetic nervous system to fully engage. The patient feels safe, the parents feel supported, and so the physiological environment is primed for the stem cells to operate efficiently.
But okay, I need to challenge this entire premise because we are sort of dancing around the biggest hurdle in this entire space.
Okay, what is it?
If you're listening to this analysis and you recognize that exact same local burnout we talked about, the science might make total sense to you. The hotel might sound really nice.
Yeah.
But how on earth do you know who to trust?
Yeah, that's the big one.
If I type stem cell therapy Mexico into a search engine right now, I'm going to get thousands of hits. Anybody with a few $100s can buy a premium website template and make their clinic look like, a Johns Hopkins facility.
Totally.
How does a desperate parent avoid just jumping off a logistical cliff blindfolded?
That is the exact friction point that prevents widespread access to global healthcare. It's the paralysis of choice and the profound risk of medical fraud. And this is precisely where the infrastructure of a platform like PlacidWay becomes analytically vital.
Because PlacidWay is not a clinic, right?
No, they do not administer treatments at all. They function as a comprehensive vetting apparatus and a logistical bridge.
So what does that vetting mechanism actually look like? Are they just an aggregate directory like a Yelp for doctors?
Oh, no, it's far more rigorous than that. They have been refining this infrastructure since 2007. They've served over 1.1 million patients across more than 60 countries.
Wow, that's massive scale.
Right. They aren't just scraping websites. Their network of over 2,000 clinics goes through a stringent credentialing process. They analyze international accreditations. They verify the medical licenses of the physicians against national registries.
So they actually check the credentials.
Absolutely. They audit the facilities for hygiene, technology, emergency protocols, and crucially, they track historical patient outcomes to ensure a clinic like Mesenchymal Stem Cells has a verified, reproducible track record of success.
So it's the difference between just blindly throwing a dart at a map and using a high-end GPS navigation system backed by actual satellite data.
Yes, exactly. You are eliminating the guesswork. And furthermore, they manage the friction of the actual journey.
Right.
They handle the language translations of complex medical records. They establish transparent pricing so there are no predatory hidden fees.
Oh, that's huge.
And they coordinate the on-the-ground logistics, like airport transfers and the accommodations at places like the Layla Hotel. They absorb the logistical nightmare so the family can dedicate all their cognitive bandwidth to the actual medical treatment.
When you break down the mechanics of it, it completely democratizes access to this elite science. A patient's medical options are no longer geographically restricted just by the zip code they happen to live in.
Exactly.
By acting as that secure bridge, these platforms take what feels like a terrifying leap of faith and engineer it into a clearly marked, well-lit pathway to care.
It represents a total paradigm shift in how we define healthcare access. The no from a local specialist is no longer the final word in a patient's chart.
Right. It is simply the starting point for a much broader, global evaluation of what is scientifically possible.
Exactly.
So just synthesizing everything we've pulled from these cases today.
Yeah.
We're examining a landscape where the biological reality of mesenchymal stem cells is fundamentally altering how we approach chronic conditions.
Yeah.
We've traced the mechanism of how these cells act as general contractors, literally dissolving fibrotic scar tissue to help kidneys rebuild their own filtration systems.
We saw that with Veronica.
Right. We've unpacked the paracrine signaling that turns down neuroinflammatory static, allowing autistic children to finally access their native communication pathways. And we've seen how the terrifying logistics of crossing international borders for care are being systematically neutralized by rigorous vetting platforms.
Because the clinical data and the human outcomes align perfectly here. When you combine advanced cellular biology with secure, transparent logistics, the results are objectively transformative.
And for anyone listening who is researching this space and trying to understand how these global networks actually function, the patient stories and the clinic infrastructures we discussed today can be explored through resources like PlacidWay.com.
It's a great place to start.
Yeah, they offered a very transparent window
Yeah.
into how this vetted medical tourism operates. It is a powerful tool for information gathering and just finding that safe bridge.
The science is advancing rapidly, and the good news is the infrastructure to safely access it is already built and functioning globally.
Which leaves us with a pretty compelling final thought to chew on today. Think back to that incredibly heavy moment we discussed at the very beginning, the doctor closing the file and just saying, there's nothing else we can do.
Right.
Well, if we are already utilizing cellular repair mechanisms to rebuild failing renal tissue and successfully forging new pathways for social connection and vocabulary in the brain today, What previously untreatable conditions might become entirely manageable through secure global medical pathways just a decade from now.
It's incredible to think about.
The map of human healing is actively being redrawn, and the borders are wide open.